And granted, I did keep fighting, keep threatening. I climbed the ladder. I went to the president of that particular builder for the state and basically said, look, you're going to see me on every news channel. You're going to see me with every consumer crime fighter or scam fighter on every evening news channel, and you're not going to like the business that I cost you. Hi, I'm David Akimi with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Today I'm here with my teammate, Bill McGee.
Hello.
How's it going, Bill?
It's going great.
Good, man. So today we're going to talk about sneaky builder practices that we've seen coming up in 2022. You know, in the past, dealing with a builder was pretty straightforward, but lately we've had such deprived inventory. You know, there's literally 1/10 the normal inventory, and the builders are sitting on a steady supply of some of the only inventory that's out there. So unfortunately, it's given them leverage to really pull some stuff lately that quite frankly in the past was unheard of, and I'm a little dumbfounded that I'm seeing some of it. And today we're going to talk about some of these things that we're seeing and how you can avoid them and how you can...
I'm dumbfounded when it happens, but I'm also not that surprised because they're just greedy.
It is greedy.
You know,
Yep.
and it used to be I'd share war stories in a sales center with some builder sales rep saying, yeah, my listing got 10 offers last week, and I think they started to see that and
Yep.
say, I want some of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it makes sense. We're in a free market society, so you can't fault them for trying to make as much money as possible. It's not necessarily the fact that they're doing it, it's the way that they're doing
Yeah,
it.
totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so number one sneaky, shady builder practice is increasing the price during the build period. Talk about that.
Yeah, it's something we're seeing lately that we've never seen anything like it before, and it is probably the most disturbing thing that I'm seeing builders do. That's why we have it as number one. In the past, when you would walk into a builder to reserve a dirt start, put your money down, reserve a lot, pick your structural options, get everything set to go, you would lock the price in. You'd pay the price that they'd advertise, you'd pay for the structural options, you'd lock it in, and then you were off to the races for 10 months to build it. The only thing at that point that could have come in and maybe changed the price would be what choices you made in the design center. And of course, that's all totally above board because it depends how much constraint you can practice when you get into the design center. However, what we're seeing now is that they're basically saying they can increase the base price and the lot premium based on construction material increases over the course of the year. And this is really disturbing. Fortunately, the big builders aren't doing it yet. I've only seen a few of the mom and pops, but I am seeing several of the mom and pops put this clause in their contract that says they've got the right, after you put money down and after you contract this property, that they can arbitrarily instate price increases through the course of the build period. And if you're not willing to pay the price increases and pay what the price has gone up to, they have the right to keep all the money that you've put down on the property and kick you to the curb. And sometimes money down with a builder can be substantial. If you got to put a percentage of the structural options, percentage of the design center options and your down payment, you can be talking about 50 grand with some of these builders. And if they decide they're going to raise the price to a point where you no longer qualify or are not comfortable with what the payment's going to be, they keep all the money that you put down.
Yeah, and what's particularly frustrating, this is not too many builders doing this, but when they do it, it's frustrating because a lot of times I'll come to a house that maybe has just been started, like they have a foundation, and we say, hey, can we change the counters? And they say, no, we order all that stuff ahead of time. So why would there also be a clause that says in case of building material increase?
Exactly.
You just said you already bought it all, whatever, ordered it. Anyway, so yeah, that's shady.
It's shady,
Don't
totally
love it.
shady, because I agree with you. They order everything right at the get-go. Most of the builders that I've ever encountered all have that same policy. They won't let you change cabinets, they won't let you change granite, they won't let you change the flooring once it's all been picked because they've got the order in and it's already locked in. So how they're claiming that increasing prices are justifying the fact that they're doing this, I don't buy it for a second.
So when we get done with our six, we're going to touch on the difference in contracts between a resale home and a builder contract, but the fine print is key. So number two, sneaky builder practice is delaying lot releases with routine price hikes.
Yeah, we're seeing a ton of it. So it's been pretty common that the builders always implement price increases as they go along.
Right.
The disturbing thing that we're seeing right now, though, is that they're not releasing lots on a routine basis because they claim that they're overwhelming the construction crew.
Right.
So they're saying, well, we've got to stagger these lot releases and delay them so that we don't burden the crews and overcommit ourselves. There may be some truth to that. The disturbing part is they may delay lot releases 2 or 3 months, but then within that 2 or 3 months, they're still initiating weekly price increases. So you've got people that have been waiting patiently on the wait list to get a lot. They've had their heart set on this particular neighborhood, on this particular lot that's about to get released, and just being increased slowly in front of their eyes, and they don't allow them to lock it in. And I've seen so many instances where people with really good intentions to move forward on a lot literally get priced out before the builder will let them lock it in.
It doesn't feel good. And I had one particular client last year who, we were in the builder sales center and they said, we should be releasing this lot that you want in about 3 weeks, which is good because the next price increase is in 4 weeks. Well, we were ready to go when, in that 3 weeks, and it didn't get released. It got released in 5 weeks. Meantime, that price release happened, and it just really felt like they waited for the price release, price increase.
Exactly. It's always so
release
convenient.
the lot.
The price increase comes on a Saturday, and the lot release doesn't happen until the following
And
Monday.
it was a chunk of money. It was like $8,000 or $10,000.
Yeah, I see it all the time, 8 to 12 grand, and literally they delay the lot release 3 days after they do the price hike.
Yeah.
Really, they couldn't coincide that. Of course,
Right.
it's structured by design that way.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, number 3 is taking bids, which is kind of a new animal for new construction. Both on a lot, like a dirt start, and even on a spec home.
Yeah, and on the model homes when they release those for sale.
Model homes, as you mentioned before, almost makes sense because it's
Sure.
a one-off of a house, and
Super
and
nice,
it's
super
already
rare.
built, that kind of thing. But a little over a year ago, I was helping some clients who happen to be very close friends, which is the only reason I found out about this. And we looked at one particular builder's project, and they had another project nearby. Try not to say the name of the builder. And now I had registered my client. I was their registered realtor, all that stuff. They emailed my client without copying me and said, hey, at this other project, we're taking bids on dirt starts. So these homes should have been around $800,000, and they were looking to try and get 900. And they said, submit your highest and best. And even put in a phrase that said something like, this is not eligible for people who are represented.
Wow, so they were trying to have them draw them into a bidding war without your representation and cut you out of the equation.
It's not allowed. I
No.
called the regional sales manager because I know who he is, and I said, is that okay? And he said, it's not, I'm sorry. And so that's not cool.
No, it just deprives them of guidance through the process, contractual consultation. It deprives them of the right to have you there at the phase inspections when you're looking at the wiring and the framing and the placement of the HVAC ducting, all the things that the typical layman has no clue what they're looking at, and we do. If they deprive them of the right to bring us, they lose all that help.
The other thing that really bothers me about that is, if that client has been hearing things are going for 100,000 over, and they go in and just bid 900 on a house that should have been 800, without a realtor involved, a good negotiator involved. Here's the thing: when we're helping somebody buy a resale home, and we have to go 100,000 or 150,000 over, we want to win by $2,000.
Sure.
We don't want to win by 100.
By 100 grand, you don't want to overpay.
So there's a lot of negotiation and skill that you and I do every time on those, talking with a listing agent, things like that, to try and win by a hair, not by 100. So what I have found is a couple of these builders that are saying we're taking bids. I found out you can actually buy it for asking price, for list price.
Yeah.
So they were just hoping somebody.
And they may not have other bids, and that's the thing.
Exactly.
Your client may go in and take the bait and submit a bid above asking and not bother to ask, do you have any other bids in hand? So it's bad.
Yeah.
And another thing along that same line is the appraisal too. Builder contracts usually contain verbiage that says if some way, somehow that house fails to appraise, it's not their fault.
Yeah.
You got to make the difference up. Now, usually when they're not taking bids, they're very systematic about how they price things. They know that it's going to appraise for what they're selling it for, and they've done due diligence to make sure all that lines up. So it's very, very rare that we ever see a new build fail to appraise. However, if they're starting to take 100,000 over bids, you easily could open up a door to a low appraisal. And the verbiage in that contract probably says if it appraises low, you're going to make that 100 grand up in addition to your normal down payment, or guess what? We're going to kick you to the curb.
And keep your
keep
deposit.
your money, keep all your money.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Not cool, I should say.
Not cool, not cool.
Number 4, builders often tie huge incentives to using their title company. I mean, the seller usually chooses a title company, but in the case of builders, they have their own title company, their own mortgage company in some cases. And I know you're going to talk about the insurance as well. So talk a little bit about why that's a shady practice.
Well, on the surface, you would think if they're going to force you to use their mortgage lender, it's because the mortgage lender is not competitive. And in all fairness to the builders, the mortgage companies usually are fairly competitive. You know, they definitely will allow you to bring an outside lender in and compare the quotes. Typically, they'll get pretty close to it. And even if they're a little bit higher, maybe an eighth or a quarter of a point higher, you might be talking $20, $30 a month higher mortgage payment, but they are going to give you $5,000 or $10,000 or $12,000. Usually, $25 a month higher payment, but they're giving me 12 grand. At that rate, you know, it would take a ton of time to recoup the 12 grand. So it definitely makes more sense to take a little bit higher rate and let them give you the money. So that I can understand. The thing that we're seeing though that's super shady lately is that they're now pushing you to use their insurance policies. And I can tell you, I've examined some of these insurance policies and most of them are horrible. And they've got ridiculously high deductibles and they don't have some of the good clauses that you want to see on a homeowner's policy. For instance, a typical good homeowner's policy has a $1,500 or $2,000, maybe $2,500 deductible on the roof and physical damage. So if you get a hailstorm that comes and damages your roof, you pay $1,500, $2 grand, $2,500, whatever the deductible is. They pay the rest of the $14,000 or $15,000. You got a new roof a week later. What we're seeing now, though, is that some of these insurance companies are getting wise to the fact that they're paying for a lot of roofs. So they're starting to put percentage-based deductibles. So they're going to tell you that the deductible is 1.5% of the value of the policy or 2% of the value of the policy. Well, hey, on a typical $700,000 Denver home, 2% of the policy is 14 grand. Guess what? A roof costs 14 grand.
Yeah.
So they've essentially designed these deductibles so that they never have to replace a roof again. And that was the policy that this builder was trying to push me to take. So I went out, found an insurance broker, was able to find a policy with the exact same price, higher coverages. It gave me higher dwelling coverages, higher construction coverages, and it gave me it gave me a $1,500 deductible instead of a 2% deductible. The other big thing on insurance policies, and I don't claim to be an insurance broker, I'm giving you my slightly above layman understanding of it, but I have been talking to a lot of insurance brokers lately. The other big one is a walkaway clause. So the Marshall fires in Louisville and Superior that just happened, that entire area burned, it decimated an entire neighborhood.
Right.
Well, it caused environmental stuff. So now the government's saying, well, you can't rebuild these houses until we conduct this 2-year environmental cleanup of the site.
In some cases. Yeah.
So, you're getting these poor people that can't even start the rebuild process until that process starts, and then it may be another 1.5 years. So you're essentially displaced for 3.5 years before you can get your house rebuilt. A better insurance policy has what's called a walkaway clause, where they don't force you to actually rebuild that house. They'll take that house on as their responsibility, and they write you a check and say, here you go, day one, here's your check, go build or buy somewhere else so you can get on with your life. So you absolutely want a walkaway clause in your policy. You absolutely want a flat dollar-based deductible. And I can tell you that the policies that the builders are trying to push you to take in order to get their incentives usually don't include either of those things.
Yeah. Now, if the lender that they force you to use fails to perform, like they can't get you the program that you want or can't get you approved or something like that, you're allowed to get out and still maybe get the incentive. If their title company sucks, which they often do, I don't know how to say that politely, they don't have to compete for business. Like most title companies, a mile from our office, actually, there's a Pecos and 120th, there's 8 title companies within a 3 or 4 building area.
And those guys all have to deliver fantastic customer service because they've got fierce
we're
competition.
shopping for them.
And they've got massive competition. The builders title companies, on the other hand, complete opposite. The builder title companies, good example, when they set the closing time, they call everyone, the agent, the buyers, and basically say, we're closing this day, this time, show up. No exceptions. And a lot of times they give me a time that I've already got another closing or I've got a relocation buyer that I'm scheduled to be out with all day, and there is zero flexibility. They say, sorry, you need to make other arrangements for your other appointment because this is the time we're closing, take it or leave it. And
whereas the title companies that we work with on a regular basis are like, hey, how's this work for you? Because they want our business.
They're super flexible. They're going to work with everybody, and sometimes the seller closes separately than the buyer. They do whatever they've got to do. Even if they got to split the closing into 2 to accommodate everybody, they bend over backwards. Not the builder title company. The builder title companies are jerks, quite frankly. They tell you this is when it's going to happen. Sorry, Charlie.
So if it goes bad and we're representing you, we can kind of help you guide you out of that problem.
Or show you better alternatives.
Number 5, sneaky, shady builder practice is running changes and omissions, especially on everything's included type builders.
Yep.
So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so some of these everything included builders where you don't have a design center, where the model home is representative of the actual product. They're not going to be super stripped down. They're not going to be over the top. They're actually right in the middle. Nice stuff that most people want. The what you see is what you get price,
right,
and what you see is what you get model homes. The thing that I've seen lately in the last year, and I got to admit, it actually happened to me. I bought a home from one of these builders. They instated running changes, and they had me sign some microscopic print that I initialed in the bottom of one of the floor plans. I read that contract from front to back and didn't see anything that was alarming. And sure enough, they slipped past this little tiny 4-point font, a little tiny disclaimer at the bottom of one of the floor plan sheets that I initialed that says, "We've got the right to change this floor plan at will and state whatever running changes in the house that we build for you between now and the time you take possession of it, and you have no recourse in it." And they took $20,000 worth of structural options
You
out of
lost
this house.
your butler's pantry?
Yep, with glass face cabinets.
Your
which is-
fancy shower in the master? Well, I will say this, you should have been represented. I would have helped you. I would have read that contract carefully for you. Next time, you should be represented.
I don't know, man. I see bifocals on your lenses that I don't have.
That's why I can see
Oh,
them.
maybe so. Maybe I should have the
Yeah,
bifocals. That's what
right.
it is. I should have read that tiny print at
Yeah,
the bottom of that
exactly.
diagram.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, be careful. The builders are reserving the right to make changes. You need to ask these questions in advance, because in this case, they already knew what these changes were. That's the thing that was really shady. They already had made this running change, and they knew what they were having me sign. They showed me a 360 virtual tour of this particular model that I was buying, because they didn't have it modeled physically at the site where I was purchasing. So they showed me the 360 tour. The 360 tour had all these things in it. And they said, "It's going to look just like this house. It's going to look just like this. It's going to have all these things. We're selling it to you off of the tour. You can rest assured what we're showing you is what you're getting." They'd already made the changes to the floor plan, and I didn't catch it because that stuff was already on the floor plan that I signed. But you got to remember, these things are very rudimentary little kind of stick figure like drawings on the floor plan. They're not detailed. They don't necessarily show the shower heads in the shower. So how did I, even if I'd looked at it super carefully, I couldn't tell that they pulled them out because it wasn't represented on the thing that they had me initial. But they had tiny print that said they reserved the right to make those changes. And when it came down to it, I of course put up a big protest and raised a stink. They basically said, "Well, we'll let you out of the property if you want out of it. We'll give you your earnest money back. We don't normally do that, but we don't want you unhappy."
They knew they could sell it for more.
They knew it had already gone up $30,000 or $40,000, and they knew I'd already been in temporary housing 3 months, and they knew I had another 3 months to go in temporary housing, and there was no inventory. So what? They're going to let me out of my contract, give me my $5,000 back. So now I'm back to square one with no house, starting the temporary living over. I mean, it just wasn't didn't feel good. So of course I was forced to proceed. And granted, I did keep fighting, keep threatening. I climbed the ladder. I went to the president of that particular builder for the state and basically said, "Look, you're going to see me on every news channel. You're going to see me with every consumer crime fighter or scam fighter on every evening news channel, and you're not going to like the business that I cost you." And of course, I became a squeaky enough wheel that they eventually gave me a $5,000 concession. But end of the day, $5,000 is better than nothing. But they took $20,000 worth of stuff out of my house and gave me $5,000 for it. So you just have to be super careful when you engage these builders.
All right, that brings us to number 6, forcing you to be 100% non-contingent when you're doing a dirt start. So non-contingent means you've already sold your house.
Already sold your house.
Your old house.
Yeah.
So, boy, it used to be they'd give us at least a few months.
Yeah. I mean, it was common practice that a lot of the builders would at least let you, have a house that you still had to sell when you started the dirt start and gave them the down payment and contracted everything. And then, they might force you to double move 5 or 6 months in, but at least you could plan on it. You could comfortably market your house. You could comfortably get it sold, and it wasn't the end of the world. I mean, it was an inconvenience, but it was livable. Right now, what we're seeing, though, the builders have such limited inventory and there's so much competition for the lots that are getting released in the really popular neighborhoods that they're coming up with a strategy where they basically say you can't even reserve the lot. When we call your name to come in, if you win the lottery and get chosen to come in and reserve a lot, if your house is still not under contract the day we call you to come in and sign it, we're going to move on to the next person. So they're basically forcing people to sell their home before they're even 100% sure that their name's getting called on the lottery. Now, sometimes the builder's reps will give you maybe a few days notice and say, hey, it looks like your person's probably going to get pulled based on the number of people in the pool and their priority on the wait list. But that basically puts me in a position where I had to scramble and list this guy's house in 6 days. We did it. We pulled it off. We got it under contract because fortunately everything's selling first weekend. We made it happen, but boy, was that inconvenient for that particular
Yeah, and
seller.
boy, if you're contracting a new build in October and you're forced to go on the market in October, November, December. December's an okay month for that, but boy, if it's December 20th, that's a terrible week to
time.
go. So it's much better to be able to say, well, let's wait till March.
Or the week right after back to school starts. That's
Yeah,
always a huge slump. And there's Murphy's Law says they release your lot that week. That's the absolute worst weekend to list. So yeah, you might still get it sold, but that weekend you may end up getting $20,000-$30,000 less for it because you get less traffic and less bids on it than you would have if you'd had just another 2 or 3 weeks luxury of time to list it properly. So it's really an uncool practice that these guys are trying to force people to be 100% non-contingent before they'll even let you initiate the dirt start.
So overall, I said I'd touch on this at the end. A contract to buy and sell in Colorado, we use commission-approved forms, real estate commission. It's an 18-page contract, and you and I can recite it in our sleep.
Sure.
It's very heavily buyer biased, meaning the buyer has at least 8 different opportunities to get out and get their earnest money back.
Yeah, the Colorado Real Estate Commission is extremely consumer friendly, so all of that verbiage is slanted toward buyers' rights.
Whereas with a builder, builders negotiated with the Real Estate Commission to write their own contracts, and they are usually 118 pages. I had one recently that was 80, which felt short, but that 80, 100 pages, whatever, is full of pages that say you can never get your deposit back. No how, no way. And full of fine print like, we may change, you may not get your butler's pant. We may change the floor plan. We may change the finishes.
We may take 2 years to build this thing.
Oh yeah. Well, the one that I just did recently said it could be up to 2 years. And then it said, and if there's an act of God, like a pandemic or a storm or whatever.
It can be longer.
So basically it says we have up to 2 years unless we need more.
Yeah, and it could say stuff like we touch on in the first point. We can raise the price between now and the time it closes.
So the bottom line is, you really need us to be looking at it, and that's why I have these. This prescription on my bifocals is for reading that fine print. And by the way, it doesn't cost you anything. These builders budget to have us be representatives. To be your realtor.
And it's not like you're going to get a better deal if you go in without a realtor. Right now, like we said, they're sometimes asking for bidding wars. They're definitely getting their asking price. They're selling these things as fast as they can release them. If you don't take it, the next guy in will. So you're not going to get a better deal if you come without an agent. And you might as well bring somebody that has your best interests in mind.
Yeah, like you should bring me. So thanks for watching. If you have any sneaky or shady builder practices that you've encountered that we didn't touch on, we'd love to see them in the comments. If you have any questions on what we talked about, put it in the comments. We'll be sure to get back to you. And stay tuned for the next video. It's going to be even more exciting. Thanks a lot.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.